How does a flashlight become the most suspicious object in the Ramsey home? It was found neatly placed on the kitchen counter. No fingerprints, no dust, and yet no one in the Ramsey family claimed to have put it there. Patsy said it looked like the one John used for the garage or the car, something that he kept in a drawer by the back staircase. But John, he said he didn't remember using it, that it was clean, maybe not even working, and he wasn't even sure that the one that he was looking at was even his. So why would two parents describe the same object so differently? Why would a household item go from ordinary to untouchable? This question isn't just where the flashlight came from, it's why no one wanted to claim it. Shout out to Eve of West for continued support. Really appreciate you, Eve. Much love. And Eve had a comment that I was looking for. She wasn't feeling well. And so, Eve, I hope you're feeling better. Um, I think you were under the weather or something like that. I'm still looking for that comment. But anyways, thank you so much for powering through and being who you are and supporting me on this journey. So thank you for the love and the encouragement. And I hope this next video cheers you up. So I just have a few questions or some things to talk about. Looking at this sort of flashlight thing, there are two things there are two things that people typically talk about when they talk about the item that was used. And I want to be careful because YouTube was fighting me about some language that I used on some of the previous videos, saying that it was too violent. It's like, okay, so let me try to curb the language a little bit, even though I don't. Anyways, so these are typically the two items that are said. One of the two items that are said to be involved in the big blow towards JonBenet. And so the flashlight kind of deal is, as I can see, recovered from the Ramsey home and listed as Exhibit 201 in the forensic files submitted by Detective Thomas Trujillo in 97, April 9 of 97 is where that is. And this comes from the CBI lab report. And just in the interest of full transparency, just kind of bringing up the report. Where I'm pulling from. And so this is one of the reports. So I think I got it from, I think I know where the other one is. But anyways, this one's from April of 97, submitted on the 9th of April and completed on the 15th. You have a flashlight, and to be fair, you're again looking at the Walkers, Stuart and Roxana. Roxy is mentioned, a little bit. It was a sort of like a trio, Roxy, Susan, and Patsy for a while. So you have Susan Stein here and Glenn and these people who were tested. But anyways, to be fair, this was going to say, to be fair, no blood or any other human body fluids were indicated on the flashlight. Okay, so just kind of, and I don't want to get, too distracted, but anyways, no fluids are indicated on the flashlight. So I'm just asking questions. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the flashlight wasn't altered, but according to this analysis, no blood was on there or anything else. So just wanted to kind of show that. Okay, so the flashlight found in the Ramsey home became a point of discussion and questioning for both John and Patsy during the investigation. Their statements regarding the item evolved over time, is what it seems like. They had There was some consistency. I'll say that there was some consistency on the statements, um, but there are some questions so that I think need to be discussed. With Patsy providing extensive details in her June of 1998 interview, building upon earlier brief mentions, and John consistently reinforcing his point across multiple interviews. So, trying to walk through this chronologically, breakdown of this flashlight discussion. I don't think in the initial interviews in 1997, I don't think I found any statements of John mentioning it, mentioning the flashlight at all. Um, and so one of the questions I was asking was, where was the flashlight stored? And then, did John claim to use a flashlight on a regular basis? So I don't think that John answered that question in 1997, and I'll go double check. So I just checked like the 27 references to light at all, and no mention of flashlight. So, um, kind of moving forward, and like I said, I'm just going to kind of walk these down. Um, did John claim to use a flashlight regularly? As you know, John Ramsey did not discuss the flashlight. No information available coming from that. So coming down to Patsy, though, did Patsy mention who used the flashlight and where it was kept? So in Patsy's interview, though, and this is interesting, it's really interesting, that they asked Patsy about it, but not John. I think that's interesting. But Patsy Ramsey stated that John Andrew gave John a big black one, a flashlight, which she believed John kept in the plane. I think she clarified that the big black one was usually kept in that drawer. She further describes this drawer as the drawer by the sink or at the bottom of a circular staircase. So what she's talking about is that I think this is the place where John and Patsy are pretty consistent in where they're talking about keeping a flashlight. They're saying it's down by the spiral staircase, sort of in one of the drawers, down by the spiral staircase, which is that place in front of the butler's kitchen. So when you come down the spiral staircase, uh, maybe, and if you're familiar with this, bear with me, but when you come down the spiral staircase, what she's talking about is, she's from the second floor, she's coming down the spiral staircase. So wherever you come from, you could come from the garage, the kitchen, or whatever. There is, and as you guys know, there's a little table right here. This is the butler's kitchen. There's a little table right here, and there's sort of drawer. It's like a table and stuff like that, I guess, where they write stuff and whatnot. Checks and letters to different people. There was like a letter to some investment guy who, I found him to be some guy who worked for like Merrill Lynch or something like that. But there was there's a letter from him to John or John to him, and this guy worked at Merrill Lynch or something like that. But anyways, so that's essentially where it was. What they're talking about, sort of in that catch-all drawer that Patsy talks about, or like they call it a dump drawer. So when shown a photograph of the flashlight on the kitchen counter, Patsy confirmed it appears to be the big flashlight John Andrew gave John. So I'm a little confused here. And maybe you can kind of help me in that, Patsy starts talking about, okay, we have this big black flashlight that's kept on a plane. Okay. But it's also, now it's in the drawer. We kept it in the drawer, the catch-all, but now it ends up on the kitchen counter. If you would just say we have multiple flashlights, John keeps one in his plane, he keeps one in this drawer right here, then that would make sense. But instead of saying that, she says he has one in his plane that his son gave him, and it's like she's talking about the same flashlight. So at first it gives the impression that this flashlight is sort of bouncing around from the plane to the dump drawer, or the catch-all drawer in the hallway, and now it's on the kitchen counter. But it's definitely the one that she recognizes that John Andrew gave to John. Big black one. Let's hold that. Huh. That's really weird. Oh, okay. I'm thinking of something different. Okay, I'm thinking about the binoculars. Okay. Was the flashlight said to work? Was the flashlight said to work or not to work at this time? So Patsy says Patsy did not explicitly state whether the flashlight worked or did not work in her 97 interview. And so she just focuses on the storage of and the identification of the flashlight. So not necessarily identifying whether it works or not. And then I go into did either John or Patsy mention seeing or handling the flashlight on December 25th or 26th of 96? So neither John or Patsy mentioned seeing it or handling it on either of those days in their 97 interview. Um, and we have a lot, so I'm trying to make sure that I stay on track, within a reasonable amount of time. So anyways, did either describe more than one flashlight or a backup flashlight? So Patsy here seems to mention multiple flashlights. So in a sense that she stated that Burke had some round ones, and then she also noted that John kept one on the plane, I think, in addition to the big black one that John Andrew gave him. So kind of clearing out some space, and I'm still hesitant to believe that, but anyways, apparently there was one, but I do know that they both confirmed that there was one that John Andrew gave John. And so I'm kind of on that. So were any descriptions given about the drawer's location? Was it in the kitchen or in the bar area? Just for clarity, and Patsy Ramsey consistently describes the usual storage location of the large flashlight as a drawer by the sink at the bottom of the circular staircase, and she referred it to as a catch-all sort of dump drawer, is her wording, while she was shown a photograph of the flashlight on the kitchen counter. Her descriptions of it, its normal storage place to the drawer location described. So kind of going into the 1998 follow-ups, where we're kind of looking at their 1998 statements, where I think now John is able to get more involved in this discussion. I don't know why they didn't ask him that in 1997. That's really weird. So where did John now say the flashlight was kept, and did it change from 97? So in June of 1998, John Ramsey stated that the mag flashlight. So we bring in a mag flashlight. Now, if you've seen a mag flashlight, a mag flashlight is pretty. A mag flashlight is pretty. It's pretty heavy duty. I think I would say a mag flashlight is probably the one of the most heavy duty flashlights that I've seen. You know, it's heavy. It's big. It's heavy. And I remember holding one, and you just kind of, you know, you just it makes you like, okay, so if you've ever watched wrestling and stuff like that, you kind of think of somebody like Big Boss Man, and he had this nightstick and stuff like that, and so you kind of think of him. But anyways, like when we had stuff like that, we would always play like we were, Big Boss Man and stuff like that. So, and when you would like take the flashlight and you would like hit it against your hand, like sometimes we would take it and we would hit the flashlight against our hand like this. We would just kind of like hit it against our hand like that, and you could feel the weight, and so you liked sort of some of the grooves and stuff like that in the flashlight, but immediately you get the sense of this thing's heavy, and so like we would play on like barely tapping each other with it, but it's heavy. You don't really want to do too much, and this is not. You get the sense that this is not something that you can take a lot of liberty with in terms of touching somebody with it if you're playing too much. You don't, that might turn a playful moment into a serious moment if you hit somebody too hard with the flashlight. So anyways, in 98, he stated that the Maglite flashlight was probably in the bar, and that bar drawer was typically where it was kept, is what he said here. So he also mentions the flashlight in the car. He's having a flashlight in the car also, but saying that it's the smaller flashlight. And I think in August of 2000, he reiterates that the flashlight from his son was normally in the drawer down in the little sink area in the in the back hall. And so I think this flashlight, according to John, is the one that's stored here, which I think is the one that Patsy's talking about in 1997. But if we think about whether Burke used a flashlight at all or something like that, um, he could have had an option to use one of these little round ones, which apparently I don't know if he did or not. That could be an option. That would make this picture murky if he used a flashlight to go downstairs. Basically in the Dr. Phil interview, he's saying he's going back downstairs afterwards, and I think he said and I can't remember his response. I think he said that he traveled back downstairs, and um, Dr. Phil asked him. I know Dr. Phil asked him if he used a flashlight to go back downstairs, and I can't remember what he said, but maybe, possibly. Comparing this to Patsy's 1997 statement, where she said the big black one was usually kept in the drawer by the sink at the bottom of the circular staircase. John's description of 99 in 1998 and 2000 are consistent with that drawer location inside the house. So we're talking about the same flashlight here, especially some sort of mag flashlight that he got that was kept down in the drawer. And so while John in the bar hallway or in the sink area, but it's inside the house. So while John did not discuss the flashlight in April of 97, his later statements align with Patsy's initial description of its indoor storage. Now, did he acknowledge the ownership, or did he acknowledge ownership or use at this point, or distance himself from the flashlight? So, okay, now that we know that you're aware of a flashlight, how do you claim it? And so John Ramsey acknowledged ownership of the mag flashlight in 1998, stating that his son gave it to him as a Christmas or birthday present a year or two ago. And I think some later parts said it may have been for like Father's Day or something like that as well. Like that's one of the things, like Christmas or birthday or like Father's Day or something like that. I think I read that somewhere. If we run up on it, then great. If not, whatever. However, he seems to distance himself from its functionality and specific use that morning. So, when asked if he used the flashlight at all on December 26th to look for JonBenet, he stated, "I don't think so. There was no reason to turn the lights on. I wouldn't even bet that our flashlight worked. If I were to bet, I'll bet it wouldn't work." Okay, we just didn't keep up with that. In 2000, he also questioned if the specific dirty flashlight that he was looking at in a photo was his, because his was clean. And he didn't know that that was my flashlight, according to what he said. He further commented, "My flashlight, while it looked to be the same size, mine was clean, and that his was, I don't think mine ever got used. It was just in the drawer." So apparently, John Andrew gives Dad a flashlight and Dad doesn't ever use a flashlight, which is really weird because I will say this. Um, it's weird and it's not weird because I haven't used a flashlight in a long time. Well, no, that's a lie. I'm lying. I'm lying. I don't use a flashlight in this context. I haven't used a flashlight in this context in a while because now we have flashlights on our phone. So I do, because I was thinking, I was like, man, so what do I use when I put oil in the car? Because I just put oil in the car and I just put coolant in the car. I was like, what did I use? A flashlight. I use a flashlight. Oh, but I use a flashlight on my phone. Oh, I got it. So yes, but I remember when I was living closer to my family, my brother had my brother had this, and it's funny. Um, Somebody mentioned some twins or something like that. I think it was CME, but mentioned twins because I'm a twin as well. But my twin brother had he liked those flood flashlights, and I was like, those are pretty dope. So he used to keep those around pretty normal. I think my dad pretty standard. I think my dad had one, and we would use it quite a lot. Just to look around the house. It was awesome. Like you love those flashlights. Once you get the flood flashlight with like the intensity of the flood flashlight, you just use it for no reason. You know what I mean? It's fun to use. And so I don't know. It's like even when we were younger and we were using flashlights, just the clicking, especially like a mag flashlight, just the clicking mechanism was dope. Just the clicking mechanism was awesome to use. You just keep clicking. Just the sound, just the sound of it. Click, 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 just for no reason. And so for John to be a handyman, a mechanic of sorts, working on his boat, working on the plane, you need a flashlight and you need to stay, even if the flashlight doesn't have batteries in it, you need to keep a handy flashlight around that works. And knowing John, he's going to keep a handy flashlight around that is of quality. And he has one of quality from John Andrew. Whether you transport it from the plane to wherever, you're going to keep a quality flashlight around. That's for certain. Now, of course, we're going with John. John is saying that he didn't do it, but if you're working on a plane and you're changing oil in the plane, look, I don't care if it's daytime, I don't care if it's nighttime. You're always to get in those small crevices of a car. You get up under a car and stuff like that. You're definitely going to have a flashlight. When my dad used to fix cars, or my dad would be fixing a car back in the day, I'd say in the late '90s, early 2000s, we would go outside, and he had this like orange, some of you guys may remember it, he had this orange flashlight that he would hang on his car, and that would kind of provide light to whatever we were doing well into this, because sometimes we would go out there late into the night, and that would tick me off that I would be out because I wanted to be inside playing video games and stuff like that. And I would be out. He was like, "Oh, come out here with me, and boys, come out. We're gonna fix the car." And I'd be like, "Why do we have to come outside?" Because in Texas, there's mosquitoes and stuff like that. Mosquitoes and bugs, they just bite. They just they light you up. So, anyways, I say all that to say my fascination with flashlights, and the flashlights are handy. You need flashlights around. So I imagine if John is a handyman, he's an engineer, you're going to have flashlights around, and they're going to work. Even if you leave it for months on end, you're going to need it, and you're going to put batteries in it. So you're going to have batteries around as well. Even if you don't use it all the time, you would have batteries around. And so he acknowledges his ownership of the light, and saying that, it was given to him, but he's not certain of whether it works or not. And he says, the pictures that you guys are showing me, I don't even know if that's mine. Mine looked clean. And so the next question says, how did Patsy describe the flashlight in 1998? Did she now say it belonged to John? So in her June of 1998 interview, Patsy explicitly stated that the black metal flashlight looked similar to the one that John Andrew gave John for Christmas, birthday, or something. She confirmed, and she directly said this: John used it. She further detailed his typical use, looking in the garage in the car or something like that. And this is what Patsy said in 1998. So in 1997, if I could, and let me make sure I save my place here. Um, Let me make sure I save my place here, because in 1997, when we look at some of the initial ones, and Patsy is the only one speaking on this. Patsy says she believed this is the big flashlight that John Andrew gave John. I think he kept it in the plane. Okay, I think he kept it in the plane, is what she said here. Bottom of the staircase. It's either kept in the plane, or there's one kept in the bottom of the staircase. Burke has some flashlights, but then she comes back in 1998 and says, "Yeah, for sure, for sure, John uses it. Um, he uses it for looking in the garage or the car." I'm sure. So you see what I'm confused, because it's like, is this the same? Is John this? I'm assuming that John Andrew only gave John one flashlight. And if we're talking about the flashlight that John got for his birthday, or Christmas, we're talking about the same flashlight. I'm assuming this must mean that John is the flashlight. He's transporting the flashlight around to different locations. Is what that must mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, but now you're telling me you first told me that he kept it in the plane, but now you're telling me that he uses it for the garage or for the car a year later. I don't know what to believe. I don't know if you just don't remember what you said in 1997 or if he like truly transported it around like legitimately. Now, of course, both are possible. He can, take it between both locations, of course, if it's especially if it's his favorite flashlight and it has sentimental value to him because his son gave it to him. His firstborn son gave it to him. So it's going to have sentimental value. John seems like the type of person to kind of take it everywhere with him. Oh, this is the flashlight that my son gave me. Look at it. Look how handy it is. I'm going to take it with me. It has sentimental value, right? And so I think that John is that kind of dad. He's going to take things around that has sentimental value to him. And of course, we don't have to speculate. If you look at the cold case documentary with John, and he's at the in the third episode, I believe, closer to the end, John is kind of, showing all the keepsakes that he has from JonBenet, her little boots and her little Bible and pictures of JonBenet and things of like that. And he has the tapes and the videos and all such that. And, when you think about it, to be honest with you, when you think about it, it's really kind of sad. It really is, because you think about it, even for John. I know we talk about John a lot and all of the things that we don't like that he's done. But when you really think about the context of, and of course I'm saying this with respect to, there are some ideals, out there that John, may have had some sort of relationships that he was accused of. Um, and he flat out rejected it in the transcripts. He flat out rejected these. So I'm saying that with respect to this, and I understand that this is I guess I'm saying that I understand that this whole sentimental thing with John is kind of a sensitive topic. But I guess from my perspective, if I assume that John is the father that he says he is, um, it's just kind of a sad moment to look at. Even if you look at the Netflix documentary and you just hate the guy, it's really a sad moment to look at, just to say, dang, man, look at an era of 6 years. Look at a period of 6 years with JonBenet, and the fact that she died in the way that she did, um, was it's just quite heartbreaking. And I can imagine, um, if we're assuming that everything is true coming from John and Patsy, I can assume that it just broke their heart. And I think for me, I feel confident in saying that it really broke Patsy's heart, because I think Patsy was probably, she didn't do everything correct as a mother. I'm acknowledging that, and then and there seems to have been neglect, of course. But when you look at these people, it seems as if you're looking at people who thought they had time to get it together. They thought they had time to change some of their ways or change some of their actions. And sometimes, as you know, as you know how life goes, that's just not the case. And so they just didn't have time to change some of the, maybe the seemingly neglectful habits of JonBenet. They just didn't have time to change that. JonBenet didn't grow up enough to be able to stand firm on some of those things and say, um, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't want to do this, Mom. This is your dream, and we just didn't really have enough time to listen to JonBenet. Is I guess is what I'm saying. We just didn't have enough time to listen to JonBenet. So, um, that's why this is so sad. And so when we think about this in the context of the flashlight, um, and why it's less likely that John would just be throwing this flashlight to the side. It's less likely that that would be the case because it's something sentimental from his son. My son gave it to me, so I'm going to be using it. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And so, but he says I definitely didn't use it that morning. And he kind of, pulls himself away or distances himself from the flashlight. And I lost my spot, so let me get back to it. Well, I know where I am, but I just need to get back to it. Um, so Patsy says, John used it, and she, further detailed his typical use, looking in the garage and the car or something like that. Okay. And so both John and Patsy were shown a photograph of a flashlight on the kitchen counter. Now, John Ramsey was shown a picture in which there was a flashlight in the background and not just of a flashlight. He identified it as a mag, like kind of flashlight, and confirmed it was on the kitchen counter. When asked if he put it there, he said, "No, not that I recall." And he said, "No idea how it got there." Later in the 2000 interview, when shown another photo of the flashlight, he noted it was dirty and it was hardly used, completely black and completely black, not and well, his was hardly used and completely black and not dirty. And he said he didn't have a flashlight that morning. Um, he also speculated that, and this is, after they've asked him so much, he goes on to say the police could have left it there. The police could have left one there for whatever or whatever. Given the chaos going on in the kitchen, the kitchen was kind of a ground zero, is what John said in the interview. And so on the other hand, though, Patsy says after identifying the flashlight as similar to the one John received, she asked, "Where was this flashlight found?" And then when she was told it was on the kitchen counter, she responded, "It doesn't make sense to me." Um, and it's interesting that she would say that because in one of the interviews, Patsy said that John's standard practice with papers. Now I don't know with tools and stuff like that, but with papers and stuff like that, John would come in and lay things on the counter and pick and choose what he wanted to take upstairs. Now she said that in the context of like, paperwork and stuff like that. But I have to imagine possibly that he would, maybe do that with other things because he's coming from the garage. They both said, we pull up in the garage and we come through the garage door and, you just kind of set things on the kitchen counter and then you decide what you want to take up and you run to, the kitchen is probably a check-in place, probably where, if I understand it correctly, probably where maybe a good amount of time was spent, for like the family dynamic. You're probably going to have, even though there's places for JonBenet and Patsy and JonBenet and Burke to play upstairs, of course, at certain times the kitchen is sort of like a common place for everybody to get together. So it's more likely that you will come in and your family will be there in the kitchen. And if this is the case, then it kind of gives the idea of what John Ramsey was going for and what Patsy Ramsey was going for in sort of curating a family like this wealthy, this well-to-do, this anyways, you get the point. This family that is very loving and very close is what is being portrayed. You have a family that's loving and very close and they're wealthy, but they still have these foundational and these core values of the American family. And this is what John wants to portray, these core values. I believe this is what he wants to portray of the American family, that we are a close knit family. We love each other. We work hard. We are well known in the community. We make friends, and our friends love us. We love our friends, and our kids are well known because of what we've done in the community. And I come home. I love after a long day of work and working hard to become a successful businessman. Maybe one day he would have written a book about the the trials and tribulations and the triumphs of being not only a successful businessman but a successful politician, is what his plan probably was. And being in a successful marriage and raising two having two successful kids grown and out into the world. That would have been his story. That was going to be he and Patsy's story. um he's coming home in that mindset. He's coming home to a Patsy who's standing in the kitchen. She's cutting up, fruit or whatever, and he comes in, gives her a kiss, and hey, how's everything? Hey, babe, how's everything? Whatever. How's the kids? Where are the kids doing? JonBenet runs downstairs, hugs him on his legs, says, "Hey, daddy." Burke comes downstairs and he says, "Hey, champ, how you doing?" Rubs him on his head. "Good, dad." And they kind of go off and run. "Hey, how was your day?" This is the kind of setting. And so that's why John, I think, would go in there and put something down on the kitchen counter. And so, under that sort of pretense, I guess you would say, if the family is like this, then the kitchen would be a reason why things would be placed in the kitchen because we're coming in to meet in the kitchen. And so, was there any confusion or denial despite um, uh, seeing the specific flashlight? Yes, there was confusion and denial of both. So John Ramsey expressed confusion about the flashlight's presence on the kitchen counter, denying that he put it there or knew how it got there. He also denied that the dirty flashlight shown in a later photo was his, insisting that his was clean and hardly used, etc. Patsy stated that she doesn't know how it got there, or it doesn't make sense to her that the flashlight was on the kitchen counter because usually it was kept in the drawer here. She also said, "Not that I recall ever seeing it on the kitchen counter before." So they're flatly denying that that flashlight should be in the kitchen. And this is such a small detail because in this case, you're now denying that the flashlight could ever be there. You're making a big deal as to why the flashlight could be there. And it's almost as if this is like a preventative measure to say, I don't even want to walk down that flashlight path, right? I don't even want to go down there. And that's what's funny because when we look at the fact that there's no bodily fluids, there's no human fluids on that flashlight, it would make it seem like this is not important. We shouldn't even be thinking about this. If you say that it's not used in anything having to do with JonBenet, then we put it on the flashlight, we use it from time to time, we put it on the counter, whatever. But this is what I'm talking about. When we talk about the intruder theory, and people and I don't mind you believing in the intruder theory, but this is what I'm talking about when we say, and people are bent on certain things when they say, well, John said this or Patsy said this. John and Patsy said a lot of things that when you dig into this, you realize whether you like them or not, we're not questioning whether they're good people. I'd say that some of you are. So you have to be careful there. Some of you are questioning that. But the point is, John and Patsy say a lot of things. I don't know how that got there. And that's why you start to ask, oh, well, an intruder must have. Well, think about it. This smart intruder, why would he just leave a flashlight? You see what I'm saying? Because that's the implication. Well, Burke wouldn't have done it. If you were to ask them, they would say Burke didn't do that. If you asked them JonBenet didn't do that. Did you guys do it? No, I don't know I don't know why that's there, implying that they didn't do it. Now, I know they're not saying that they didn't do it, but they're implying that what this answer implies that they didn't put that there. So we have to follow up and ask the question, well, if you didn't put that there, who would have? I don't know. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look right to be there. So the implication is that the intruder did this. Why would the intruder, and if you track every single one of these things that the intruder is supposed to have done, when did the intruder have time to commit the crime? Because the intruder spent all his time, both of them, on a house tour. It doesn't make sense. And I know it's like comical, but if he's walking around, breaking doors that he doesn't go out of, or breaking windows that he may or may not have gone out of, sneaking on balconies and all such as that, and cutting up pineapple and serving tea, and all such as that, and making a garret a garrote the night of, or a toggle rope the night of, and doing all such as that. When does he have time to commit the crime? I mean, when after all of that, he's expended a lot of energy. Why would he want to commit the crime? It doesn't make sense. So, anyways, um, Did either of them claim that the flashlight didn't work, needed batteries, or was defective? John Ramsey clearly stated in 1998, I wouldn't even bet that our flashlights worked. If I were to bet, I'll bet it wouldn't work. We just didn't keep up with that, he added. Typically, our flashlights didn't work because we needed new batteries. We might have a few blown flashlights around, he goes on to say in 1998. He also recalled putting batteries in it. I might have once, certainly, probably. Initially, I may have initially put batteries in it, but I haven't used it in so long that why would it still work? And so, Patsy, you'd be surprised how long those flashlights work with batteries and stuff like that, even after you've left them for a little while, and it's like, oh shoot, this still works. So Patsy Ramsey, on the other hand, did not claim that it was effective. Instead, she described it as John used it. He used it for looking in the garage in the car or something like that. So implying that it was very functional. She was not asked directly about its functionality, but rather its use, and her description of it seems to contradict John saying it doesn't work. So John is saying, well, initially I put batteries in it, but we had blown flashlights all over the place. But the difference is that Patsy is very definitive about, well, John used it to look in the car. Actually, we did have batteries in it. And so this becomes an issue because it's like, okay, you both agree that you don't know why it's on the kitchen counter. But John is saying not only is it funny that it's on the kitchen counter, it should have been in a drawer because we don't even use flashlights like that. But Patsy is like, no, John would use flashlights, and it makes sense because if if you're working on your car or something like that, which John probably would, if you're working on your car, then you're going to need a handy dandy flashlight. And so Patsy, and this is what I'm saying, once you dig into Patsy's statements, some of the stuff that Patsy said, Patsy is a menace to this. She is. Look, Patsy is a menace to this defense. The defense of don't say anything, don't tell anything, because she's just talking. She's not trying to get anybody in trouble. She's just talking. And some questions you don't know that you're not supposed to answer, or some things you don't know that you're not supposed to say. And so while John is in his interview saying nothing works, it's all trash, whatever, Patsy's like, oh no, John was using it for sure, for certain. So that's a contradiction. One person saying one thing, the other person saying another, and it does make you wonder, why can't you be honest? Because that's what we get with the pineapples. Why can't y'all be honest? And so we start to see this consistency in pushing away from certain things. Don't want to talk about the flashlight. Don't really want to talk about the pineapple. We don't even know if it works or not. Why would I serve pineapple? I don't even know if we had pineapple like that. And if we did, nobody would be eating at night. Nobody would even be hungry for pineapple. Is this kind of the insinuation? So just complete backing away. It's like, we don't have that. And even if we did, we don't even go near it. Okay, were additional flashlights mentioned, like blowout or cheap flashlights? And I was asking about like something cheap or something like that. And so yes, John Ramsey mentioned other flashlights. He stated, well, we've got several, I guess. He specifically identified the mag flashlight that his son gave him, also mentioning we have a flashlight in the car, but also it's a smaller thing, so maybe that's one that's different, and confirmed it was also a mag light, but a smaller one. Broadly stated, typically our flashlights didn't work because we needed new batteries. We might have a few blown flashlights. But the crazy thing is that here's another contradiction, or a seeming contradiction, is that Patsy is saying that John has a flashlight, and seemingly the one that John Andrew gave him that could be used in the plane, could be used in the car. But John is saying, no, I have two different flashlights. One I keep in the car, and one and a bunch that I keep in. He never mentioned the plane, but a bunch that I keep in this drawer down here. So I first of all, I don't know where Patsy got the plane idea from. I don't know where she got that plane idea at all. So, but it's so obscure, you got to believe her that it's just like, well, maybe he did use a flashlight in a plane, but now John is trying to separate and say we have two flashlights. I keep a small flashlight in the car, not the one that my son uses, but Patsy seems to be indicating, no, it's actually the one, whether it's small or big, it's actually the one that John got from John Andrew, and that's in the car. Or you guys just have two flashlights, one that John Andrew gave you that doesn't work, and one that's in the car that actually does work. Just say that one. But then that's the case that you actually do have a working flashlight now, don't you? And I can ask, does anybody know of a flashlight in your car? That's a more in depth and intimate question. Does anybody know? Would this intruder know that you have a flashlight in your car enough to be able to use that flashlight? What kind of flashlight is that? Enough to be able to use that flashlight and take that flashlight downstairs, or use that flashlight to go get JonBenet and take her downstairs? Would that person have that? Because you claim that the intruder knows you so much, would the intruder do that? Okay. So, did Patsy reference John's routine of placing things on the kitchen bar, and does it contradict her surprise at the flashlight's placement? So, Patsy did reference John's routine behavior that could explain items on the kitchen bar, and this does present a potential contradiction to her surprise regarding the flashlight's specific placement. In her June of 1998 um, interview, Patsy said that when she came downstairs, she could have just stopped right there and let it down, talking about the ransom note, I believe, and read the note referring to the plastic bag with clothes for the lake. You know, she woke up, and we talked about this. She woke up and at 5:30 to go put, get clothes for the lake and stuff like that, and she stopped. That was part of her 15 minutes. So she stopped with the plastic bag. And when asked about the note, John stated, I mean, if I left Patsy a note, I usually leave it on the kitchen counter. You always go to the kitchen first when we came back. If I left her a note, she was gone somewhere, she would always come back to the kitchen first. So that's where I'd leave it. I forgot about that part. So basically, yeah. So the kitchen is a central place, because it's right there. Patsy also described a general habit of John's that involved, and we talked about this earlier, involved leaving items on the bar. John would come in from the garage from work and leave things on the bar, and then from there, if he needed to take it to his desk and stack them there and take them up, we just left a lot of things there to be brought up coming down. This general behavior suggests that John frequently used the bar or the counter areas in the kitchen or the hallway as drop off points for various items. And so here we have both John and Patsy saying we do a lot of things with the kitchen. We leave a lot of things in the kitchen. So if John was using, and that's what I'm saying, it's not outside of the realm of possibility for John to essentially, it's not outside of the realm of possibility for John to be using the kitchen or the bar to put things there, because the bar in and of itself, in the kitchen or the hallway, these places are catch-alls. Everybody has a place in their house that is a catch-all place. Period. Everybody has one. And this is a place where you come in the house, you drop your keys, whatever. It's a catch-all. Okay. And so while saying that, I don't know how this got here, I don't know how this got here. Um, they also acknowledge that by omission, they also acknowledge that, well, it's possible that it could have gotten here, because we do leave a lot of things here. So this established a pattern of John placing items on the kitchen counter or the bar area, which is described as a catch-all or a junk drawer area. And it does seem to contradict Patsy's specific surprise about the flashlight being on the kitchen counter. While she found its presence unusual because its normal storage was in a drawer and its use was for the garage or the car, John's habit of throwing things on the counter, according to Patsy's earlier statement in the initial query, not explicitly in 1998 sources, or leaving notes there, makes it less far-fetched for any item like a flashlight to end up temporarily on that surface. Her surprise implies a deviation from a specific expectation for the flashlight, even if general behavior suggests other items might appear there. So moving more into the 2000 Atlanta interviews. So the question becomes, did John finally acknowledge the flashlight was his and was used by him in later interviews? And so in his August of 2000 interview, John Ramsey maintained a degree of distance from the specific flashlight found on the kitchen counter, stating, I don't know that flashlight was that was my flashlight. And this is when, and because in 1998, John was like, I do have flashlights. I noticed this one that looks like mine, but it's this, that, and the third. But when he goes into 2000, he's a little bit more hesitant to claim any flashlight. And so we take a step back, and he says, I don't know that that flashlight was mine at all. He explained this by noting a significant difference in the condition. The picture I saw was that one was very dirty. My flashlight, while it looked to be the same size, mine was clean. And so he further elaborated, mine was, I don't think mine ever got used. It was just in the drawer. So it, if it didn't get used, you got it from John Andrew, and it didn't get used, then why would you put batteries in something that never got used? That does not make sense. Come on, like, let's be for real. Like, that doesn't make sense. You can say I used it once or twice or whatever, but like to say that I never used it, that doesn't even look like mine. I don't think I ever used a flashlight. It's weird. So, anyways, it was just in the drawer. However, he did acknowledge ownership of a black metal flashlight that looked similar, confirming that his son had given him one as a Christmas or birthday present. He also stated that this personal flashlight was not necessarily the first thing that he would grab during power failure. Patsy Ramsey did not appear to address the flashlight in August of 2000. John, if you don't grab a flashlight during power failure, what are you going to use? Y'all do some weird stuff. I don't know. Normal people, under that circumstance, if they have a flashlight, that would be the first thing that they do. Look, I'm going to tell you right now. When our power went out, because, in Texas, you used to have like um, a lot of, I don't know if it was, you would have just different hurricanes. You'd have a lot of hurricanes. And, a couple times, we got flushed out of the neighborhood because the water was so high. I remember that the water was so high. The water was so high one time and I thought this was fun. I thought this was fun at the time. But I remember the water was so high that people down the street from us had a boat because they lived on one of the lakes or one of the ponds or whatever. They lived, and so they had it, but it was behind their house. And so, uh, and they were fortunate for that. And so they had a boat, but it was so high, and like I think the first floor of our houses were flooded, and we had what we called the hill. And so you would go down the hill, and if our house was flooded, then people down the hill, their house was legitimate. I had a friend who lived down the hill, or my brother's friend. We used to go over there a lot. Their house was completely underwater. Everybody down the hill, their house was underwater. And it's so sad, and everybody was okay. But anyways, it was sad. But the water was so high that they were coming by and getting people in the boat, and we were just driving the boat from the back of the neighborhood to the front of the neighborhood and let people off, where it was more conducive to walk around. But in those times, we would use flashlights to move around the house. Even if we had light, even if we had a light during the day, because you can't see everything clearly. And we would, in certain places at nighttime when the lights would go out, you know, sometimes, if the lights would go out or something like that, or what have you, maybe if the bills weren't paid or something like that, even in those cases, you would just put on candles. You know what I mean? You would put the candles on and stuff like that. So you would have a flashlight around. Only one person can use a flashlight. So when John says, even in power failure, I don't use a flashlight, then what the heck do you use, John? I know you guys are not stumbling around in the dark, because you said when you got to leave a light on for JonBenet so she's not stumbling around in the dark. And you expect me to believe that, when power failure comes, that you're going to stumble around in the dark and just walk into the wall? Come on. Like, these are basic questions. You can admit to me that you use a flashlight. And that's what I'm saying. Now we're getting ignorant. Now we're getting ignorant. We're just getting flat out ignorant. You know what I mean? It's like it's, it's like if you break your arm or something like that, or you hurt your arm, there's an injury to your arm, and somebody says, "Will you go to the hospital?" Even if you're the toughest person, at some point in time, you're gonna say, "I had to break down and go to the emergency room. I had to. The pain was too great. I had to." But even in the times when we describe situations like that, where the pain is too great, or the circumstances is just too extraordinary, um, John and Patsy are like, even in those circumstances, no, you got to be kidding me. That's your your credibility is not high right now. And so my flashlight was clean. I don't know if I ever used it. It was just in a drawer. Um, uh, Mine needed new batteries. So did they clarify or change their statements about where it was normally stored? No. John Ramsey clarified the normal storage location. Flashlight that his son gave him in his August 2000 interview. He stated it was kept normally in the drawer, that little sink area in the back. So neither Patsy, and this reinforces their previous statements in 98, probably in the bar that was typically where it was kept. Patsy in 97 and 98 also, by in the drawer by the sink or in that area, which was a catch-all or dump drawer. And so this further specifies that it was kept in the back hall. They're pretty consistent about that. Now the use of it and where it moves, that's where it kind of gets murky. Did they reference one flashlight or multiple flashlights in the home in their 2000 interview? In the provided 2000 interview excerpts, John Ramsey primarily focuses on the black metal flashlight that was found in the house and the flashlight that your son gave you, and he did not explicitly mention other flashlights in the house during this specific interview segment, unlike his more general statements in 1998 about several maybe blown flashlights. So he doesn't mention any other flashlights. Now, and was and Patsy would have done the same when she said, "Oh, Burke had flashlights." We kind of just had these different flashlights that didn't work, but now we're down to just two flashlights. Right, and so we're pared down. It's no more a bunch of flashlights, just a couple or whatever. Um, were there new details about the drawer location, kitchen versus bar area? Um, Possibly. So John Ramsey in August of 2000 provided a slight additional detail specifying down that little sink area in the back hall. Further distinguishes it from the main kitchen counter where the flashlight was found. The consistent emphasis is on its storage being in the drawer in a utility bar area, not readily accessible or visibly placed in the main kitchen space. Was there any retroactive explanation for why the flashlight was on the kitchen bar? Is the next question. So John Ramsey offered a new retroactive explanation, saying that, um, I mean, uh, there was an interview when asked if John. Well, hold on. He says, let me go back. Yes, John Ramsey offered this explanation for the flashlight's presence in August 2000. When asked if he had any idea how it got there, he reiterated his denial of placing it and then speculated. I mean, there was a lot of chaos going on. Kitchen was ground zero, so police could have left it there or whatever. But no, I don't remember ever leaving a flashlight there. And this was a new theory introduced, suggesting the possible police involvement in its placement compared to his prior statements or simply having no idea. So we're pushing the idea on. Okay, cool. So we're getting to the end. So we're pushing the idea on, now it's possible that the cops have done this, right? This is possible that, the cops may have, this actually might, because, and this is the same thing when we talk about the high-tech boot. It's possible, we have a lot of police coming through here. It's possible that the high-tech boot uh, would belong to one of the officers. We have a lot of cops coming through here. It's possible that the flashlight belonged to one of the cops. I mean, it's possible, yeah, but I mean, you know, I guess it's possible. Um, but I feel like the police would have just been like, yeah, we have high tech boots, but our high tech boots look like this. Or we have flashlights, but our flashlights look like this. We looked at that already. And so now it's a level of guilt being played, and it's more of this external framing of somebody else may have put that on a basic flashlight. You know what? And if if you're wondering what I would expect is, yeah, we've had several flashlights. There's one specific flashlight that I use, and I use this for this. I use it for this. I use it for this. But instead, you're dealing with 5 or 6 hours of interviews, and I don't know how somebody can keep this up, of very vague responses. It's either I don't know, or I don't remember, or maybe not. It's like very seldom that you hear a definitive answer. A lot of times, that's not going to help anybody solve anything. We're not going to have any help solving any investigation if you keep doing that. So, kind of looking more into sort of the cross year thematics. and just the idea. So how many flashlights? So just to kind of recap is essentially what we're doing. So basically asking how many flashlights were they actually referring to across interviews. The Ramseys referred to multiple flashlights in their home, though they focused on a specific one, which was the one stated in 1998. They had several flashlights, but John specifically mentioned the mag flashlight, which his son John Andrew gave him for Christmas, Father's Day, or a birthday present a year or two ago. This was the one that came up as an item, and I think this is item 201 in the investigation. John also mentioned having a flashlight in the car, but it was smaller, also vaguely referring to a few blown flashlights around the house. Patsy recalls in 97, Burke had some round ones. She also remembered kind of a big one that John Andrew gave to John, describing it as a big black one and feeling that it was heavy. Also believe that John kept it on the plane, I think. Next question is, were they describing the two different storage areas? And again, this is just a recap. Areas, kitchen drawer or bar junk drawer, but calling them the same thing. So are we referring to two different drawers, or are we calling the drawer the same drawer two different things? And so, no, they were consistently describing a single general utility storage area for the specific flashlight that John Andrew gave John, often referred to as a junk drawer or a catch-all. The kitchen counter was the location where it was found, not where it was normally kept. John Ramsey stated in 98 that the flashlight was probably in the bar. The bar drawer was typically where it was kept. He also pointed to a drawer in this little bar area in the hallway on a diagram. In his August 2000 interview, he further specified it was normally in the drawer down that little sink area in the back hallway. Patsy corroborated this, stating in 97 that she thought it was in that drawer, that little, we usually kept it in, I think, that drawer. When asked, she confirmed this was the drawer by the sink at the bottom of the staircase, describing that it was kind of a catch-all. Okay. Next question is, if the flashlight shown in the picture was clearly identified by Patsy, why did she express surprise about its placement? Patsy Ramsey did not unequivocally or clearly identify the flashlight in the photograph as the specific one John Andrew gave John, but rather as similar to it. So that's a discrepancy. So she noted discrepancies that led her to surprise about its placement. Patsy stated it looks similar to the one that John Andrew gave John. However, she added, although it looks kind of dirty there, and elaborated, well, the one I remember John having was pretty slick black, and that looks kind of smudgy or gray or something. But an investigator came back and explained that the flashlight had been processed. So it's been changed, likely referring to like the fingerprint powder. So they're just saying like, hey, look, we're showing you this flashlight. And so to the point of the 2000 interview, if you're blaming it on the cops or saying that maybe this is something that the cops had something to do with, they're saying, no, we just processed it with powder. Like, I need you to get this through your mind. Stop fighting me and say, oh, mine looks clean. Mine doesn't listen to what I'm saying, John. Patsy, you too. We put fingerprint powder on it because we're trying to process the flashlight. I know it looks a little different. Please stop commenting on the visual appearance of it after I tell you that we processed it and we put fingerprint powder on it. That is a forensic technique that we use to try to find any fingerprints. I'm just asking if you had a flashlight like that, and you are giving me, I am frustrated because you are giving me a childish response saying, no, mine look clean black. The response that you should have given was, well, yeah, we have one, but I mean, did you guys do something to that? It looks a little dirty. Oh yeah, we processed it. But my question is, do you have one? Oh yes. Well, if you're telling me that you've processed that, then yes, that would be my flashlight. That's all you have to say. But yet, there's a level of ambiguity that is introduced here for that reason. Despite the explanation for its appearance, Patsy still expressed surprise about its location on the kitchen counter, stating it doesn't make sense to me. She noted that, not that I recall ever seeing it on the kitchen counter before, and found it unusual to have made it all the way into the kitchen given John's typical use of it. John Ramsey similarly distances himself from the flashlight in the picture, saying in 2000, I don't know that that was my flashlight at all. So the next question becomes, how could John use a flashlight to look in the garage of the car if he said it didn't work? And so this is where it presents an apparent inconsistency in their statements. John Ramsey stated that he didn't use a flashlight to look for JonBenet that morning, generally claiming, I don't even know if it worked. Typically, our flashlights don't work, they need batteries. Further emphasizing, I wouldn't even bet that our flashlight worked. If I were, if I were to bet, they don't work. We just didn't keep up with that. And he said, he did say it might have once, but that's because I put batteries in it initially. But my flashlights don't work. Patsy Ramsey, when asked about the flashlight and what Forrest stated in 1908, John is using flashlights, like we said, and he's using it in the garage or the car. The sources don't offer any direct reconciliation of this discrepancy, though. And so we can't get an idea about why Patsy is why Patsy is seemingly betraying John and saying that John actually has a working flashlight. And John is like, nope, none of my flashlights work. So we don't have any reconciliation in the statements to say why. So why describe it as cheap or blown out when a Maglite is durable and high quality? Um, and the question becomes, it's not they're not really talking about that flashlight, but some of the flashlights are cheap and not durable, and some of them need batteries. And so the last question is, I think, could their apparent confusion reflect a strategy to dissociate the family from an object that may be used at the scene of the crime? And so we don't have any information definitive for that. Um, their statements consistently express a lack of knowledge about a flashlight and how it came to the kitchen counter. And John introducing speculation that it may be the police. It may be a flashlight that the police may have brought in. They consistently differentiate the found flashlight from John's personal one because the dirty clean thing, and they consistently state that their flashlights are non-functional and dead, except in a few cases have dead batteries. While these statements do reflect their position and potentially create distance from the item, we don't have any direct insight into some of the more motivational and psychological strategies of disassociation. But we do have sort of an idea to where we can say, okay, there is something here in that you are disassociating from this flashlight, and you John, you're saying that I don't use this, has nothing to do with me. I don't use flashlights. But then you come back and say I have a flashlight in the car that I could use. Why would you have a flashlight that you don't use in the car? Why would you have a flashlight in the car that doesn't have batteries? Because if you have a flat tire or anything, because as you've shown us, it could be the case that sometimes you get locked out, so you need to be ready for anything. And you're a veteran. And so veterans are typically the veterans I know, veterans have backups. They just have backups to be having backups. They have stuff in their cars and in their homes in different places. If you've ever been to the home of a veteran, you know what I'm talking about. It's just weird. I mean, it's not weird. It's actually quite resourceful. It's just interesting, because they just have stuff everywhere, and they're like if I go to my brother's house, my oldest brother's house, he's just going to have stuff in different places, and it's very military driven, because he was in the military, you know. And so John saying that I have a flashlight in my car, but it's not useful, that doesn't sound consistent with any military vet I know. Anything you have is going to work. And we know from John's behavior, John is on top of things. That's what I'm saying. But those, I don't want to overthink it too much. I just wanted your thoughts and opinions on it. Let me know what you think. I just thought some of the things that seemingly are contradictory kind of stood out to me a little bit. You know, can I say that this gives me confidence that this was used in this JonBenet situation? Absolutely not. I don't know, especially given the forensic evidence of it. I don't know. However, the distancing from it does seem funny, unless the strategy was just distance from everything. Don't give them an inch, they'll take a mile kind of deal. which may be possible, which is, what John seems to indicate. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Appreciate your comments and your input and all such as that. Also, once again, if you're not feeling well, Eve, anybody else, I hope if you're not feeling well, you're getting the rest that you need, taking care of yourself, so on and so forth. Always take care of yourself. Always get the help that you need. Always get the rest that you need. Relax. Take a day off here and there. Go do something fun. Enjoy the sun. And until next time, take it easy.